For too long, the perception of the black woman in this country has been negative. It goes all the way back to the founding of this country. Actually, some of the folks that were writing about the black race back then said that a black woman would be just as happy to be married to an orangutan. And their perception of beauty started with the white woman and came down to the black woman. That's lived with us for centuries. So today we see the same kind of perception being created through such programs as Monster Ball, Empire, and Scandal. Now I know that some of you out there are going to argue with me that these were very powerful roles that very powerful women were playing. Well, come on, let's check it out. In Scandal, Olivia Pope was a kept woman for the president. So the real power was with the white woman. In Empire, you have a woman who sold drugs, went to prison, comes out, has an empire, but is that how you want your daughter to believe she can make it? And of course, now we have Michelle Obama, who's changed that whole perception. And you better believe they're going to fight against her to make sure she doesn't change that perception. And today, so we're going to discuss today, is there a deliberate attempt on the part of Hollywood to paint a negative image of the black woman? And I have two very unique and talented guests here to discuss that with me. I have Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell, who's an educator, and I have Brother Andar Mott, who has produced a piece on Malcolm X and is now producing and writing a piece on Walk on That Water, a history of blacks in San Antonio. So I'm going to ask them to join me up here so we can continue this discussion.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Dr. Shadwell.
Yes.
You heard my blistering introduction there.
Yes, it was blistering.
So, Dr. Shadwell, why does Hollywood do that? Or do you think they do that? Do you think it's deliberate or subconsciously they do that?
Well, very much so. If you have to think about the history of films, going back from slavery up until the present, that there's that money pool that's controlling how images is being done. From the slavery era movies, of course, we had the mammy and the bedwench imaging that we saw. Then you move it into the black exploitation. Although we had more control over it, still there was an image that was being projected out to the community that was bankrolled by a lot of your white Jewish type of organizations. Then you start looking at moving up to the angry black woman type films. Now, interesting, Tyler Perry has made a lot of money with that type of imaging. Mm-hmm. However, again, who's bankrolling much of the films? Moving over down into the cool black girl image. Now, we don't talk about that one too much, but usually this image is where the cool black girl says, "I don't talk white, I don't talk black, I sound more white." More Valley Girlish type dialogue. Mm-hmm. She's black women in horror movies. It's kind of like, really? But the cool black girl. Then you move over into your favorite topic, the scandal effect. And the type of imaging that's coming out of that move down into the Wakanda effect that we're seeing now. And so this imaging of the black woman is a control piece. Now the interesting thing about Black Panthers is that we had a black director, and he was able to do some things in that movie that I don't think that mainstream Hollywood was aware of. There was some messaging coming out. There was some coding messages coming out of that movie that I don't think mainstream Hollywood caught on to yet. But because it was a black director, mm-hmm. he had some control over the imaging of black women in this piece. So I do believe that there is a negative, there is a programming, if you will, of trying to control the image of the black woman.
Okay, very good. I'll come back to Black Panthers because this coding, I'm interested in that. Yes. Brother Mott.
Yes, sir. Of course, listening to your commentary and taking the question to answer it very direct, yes, there is a deliberate attempt to create a perception, a negative perception of black women. But I think it's important that we understand that this is not new. Because if you understand racism and sexism, you can understand those are the driving motive behind the images of us since our period of being brought here to America. So when you look at racism, you see there are two themes that really comes out, and I'm going to add sexism in there also.
Okay.
Because in racism, you're talking about an image of glorifying one race and denigrating another race.
Yeah.
So many times in the films that we see, in the television programs we see white people being glorified and black people being denigrated. But this is the goal of racism. And on the same point, in sexism, you see this idea of men being superior to women. Now, needless to say, we know that's a falsehood. But if you project that image through the media over a period of time and people start to think that is the truth, then they will act upon that thought. So I think not only we see when we see it in the film and in television, I think we also have to be aware that, they say art imitates life, but I think, so life can imitate art. So when we see these things in art, then we start acting these things out. We start talking like these people we see on television and film. We start acting like them. And I see that can be very destructive when you have a negative perception of us, black people in America.
Okay. You want to
I want
comment?
to say something too, where I would mention the angry black woman type movies. If you look at the issue of the angry black woman, there is also another ism that has emerged out of that, that's colorism. If you look at all of the angry black women movies, okay, they're usually dark-hued women.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, now I know
Absolutely.
that for color girls, we did have our fair-skinned, sister in there who had some issues. But for the most part, in the angry black woman movies, they're always dark-hued. So this is why you go to the Black Panthers. It contradicted that angry black woman image. You know what I'm saying, where you had all these dark-hued women in here who were empowered, who were strong, who the messaging was very different. They were even very caring of their men.
Yes.
So it's just interesting how you have the angry black woman and then the Black Panther.
Today we're talking about the woman, but when you mention the perceptions based on color, and you mentioned Tyler Perry, if you look at some of his movies, the bad black guy is always dark-skinned. And I remember in Angry Black Woman, the angelic good guy was very light-skinned, and the terrible man was his dark-skinned brother. Then you do, My Dear's Family Reunion? It's the same situation. So I think the colorism is something that does play into this right in the race.
And we have the ability to control issues related to colorism. But as you're saying that Tyler is using the same formula.
Yes.
In his movies, as we've seen those movies that have been controlled by white directors.
I agree, absolutely, yes.
And I know we was talking off air, but I think that also feeds into the understanding that, when sometimes we can have, as I say, we can have beautiful black faces, but we can have the perceptions of white people. So even though we are starting to maybe write our scripts and we're starting to produce some of these movies, we have to ask, what perception are we using to write the script and tell our story? We was talking earlier about how we need to go in and first, before we maybe look at the scripts we're writing or the movies that we're producing, we need to have a better understanding of ourselves and our history as
Yes,
a people,
absolutely.
so we can tell an accurate story and a profound story, because our history is great.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's important that when we tell our story, we come from the perception or the view, as I think Dr. Asante, Molife Asante would say, we have to come and tell our story from the point of being agents, being active in history, and telling the greatness of us as our people. So when my sister was talking about the Black Panther, I was very inspired by that movie, because in the image of women, I saw some strong, intelligent, courageous women. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to have more images like that presented in our community and on television.
Right. And you said something a little while ago about art imitates life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I believe art should influence life. I believe that's one of our major problems, mm-hmm. is the art out there, the movies, the music, all seems to have a negative perception behind it. It's not positive. And I pointed out to you earlier, Denzel Washington, I love the brother. I mean, he's a great actor. But Training Day sent out a message that was really counter to what really exists. I mean, the angelic good policeman was the white guy. Mm-hmm. The devil was the black guy. Well, in our lives, we know that's not the case. In our community, we just had another, in Sacramento, 20 shots, killed a young brother, 22 years old, white policeman. So I think that white America, the people who produce these and write these movies, they want to send out a message that influences how we actually live. I don't know if either one of you, this brother here, I know he doesn't, because he doesn't. That's amazing. Let's talk about that for a second. He hasn't had a television in 25 years.
Yes. 25 years ago, I really had started coming into the knowledge and study of myself and us as a people. And I knew if I was going to really change, because there's an idea that says if you change yourself, you can change your world. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to make a change in my own life. And what I decided to do for the good of myself and my family, I kicked the TV out. So 25 years ago, I put the TV out, and what I brought in was books. Mm-hmm. I brought in positive music. I got more involved in the community and working with positive people. So I took that time where I would once sit in front of the television and get a negative image of myself and negative stories of me, and I turned that around where now I was reading the positive things that we have done, people like Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X and Ida B. Wells, and I started listening to some of this positive music, because there's some positive, even hip-hop music out there, groups like Dead Prayers. So I started really researching and finding that positive message, and I knew that was going to help reinforce the ideas that I wanted to embrace and the values that I wanted to live by. So I've been on that path since that time. Now, I would add, now I'm select. I do go watch some films, but I'm select on what I expose my mind to.
Right.
I'm not just going to expose my mind to anything when I know it's not in my best interest and doesn't create a positive image of me.
Right. That's great. I mean, that has to be a plus, and for your children too, because they're not getting filled up with all that negative stuff. It's just, I think the problem is going to be, how do we spread that kind of, how do we get more black people to think like that? I think that's our challenge.
It's a challenge, true. But I had read a book once, From Planet to Planet, by Hakeem Madhubuti. And in that book, he had a very interesting question. He said that we must always ask the questions as black people before we speak and before we act. He said, is it in the best interest of black people and humanity? Mm. And if it's not, then you don't do it, you don't say it. You see, so we have to set a new value system, a new criteria. And then those who want to can see the positiveness in that, I think will embrace that and start to act based upon that.
Right, absolutely. Did you want to add to that?
I'm just I'm still amazed about being away from the TV for 25 years.
25 years.
But you make a good point, because we have been influenced by a European standard, okay?
Absolutely.
To where, talking about from a black woman perspective, to where black women for a long time, even still, they're getting criticized for their hair. So even braids, afros, anything that looks Afrocentric, they're still getting attacked for those braids for their hair, from school up into the business. And that's because of the European definition of what beauty is.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so that has been something that we as black women have had to fight, have had to deal with for years,
Yes.
to where you come to an awakening to where I just wear my hair natural. But again, to what degree do you wear your hair natural? Because now they're starting to put in rules to where, I saw a story where black girls can't wear their hair in braids anymore to school, to a certain school district.
Oh my God. Yes.
Because it's distracting. Or she can't have her hair, in a little afro on top of her hair because it's distracting. So we're still dealing with European definitions of beauty, European definitions on how to wear the hair.
Okay.
And a lot of this is still perpetuated in movies and, media.
Right. When we come back, let's pursue that. Okay.
Okay.
Right now, we're going to take a minute break.
Okay.
We'll be right back with you.
40% of food in America is never eaten.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education? What are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else?
Or will you dare do something different?
Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills. The smarts? Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget.
That'd be cool.
Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Welcome back to Discussions with the Writer, Fred. I'm pleased to be here with my two outstanding guests, and so far I think you realize how much information they really do have to bring to us. And so let's continue our conversation. Dr. Shadwell, it's something that we struggled with. I think white America did the greatest psychological emasculation of a race of anywhere in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. Because they made us to believe that we were less than human, not up to their standards, and we bought it. We bought it. Now, I guess I would like, if I had control, I would have everyone read the history of this country right after the Civil War up to Martin and Malcolm. Mm-hmm. That's when they did the damage with the plantation literature and the shows with whites with black on their face. They used to pay money to go in there and see those shows making fun of black people. The question, though, to me was when we finally go to Harlem and we set up, we have the ability to create our culture. There's two arguments. There's Dr. Du Bois who says we need to write. We have a lot to overcome. Mm-hmm. We have to overcome what's happened for the last 100 years. He even used the term, we have to write like propaganda. Oh, but you have Langston Hughes, Claude McKay, And some of the other writers said, no, we're artists. We write for how we feel. If black people don't like it, too bad. If whites don't like it, too bad. But what they wrote was not anything to rebuild the race. So how do we attack this problem? What do we have to do?
Well, you know, the Willie Lynch effect has been a very, very devastating commentary in Black history, even today. And until we have overcome the psychological significance of that particular piece of our history,
Yes.
I think that we're always going to be in this purgatory type thing, to where either some of us will go ahead and push the envelope and go beyond Willie Lynch, or some of us will stay just on the safe side. And because when you go on the other side, when you go beyond Willie Lynch and really have awakened, you're not going to quote unquote make money.
And
You're not going to make any money.
that's the problem, isn't it?
But again, Tyler Perry, I love him, but some of the movies that he has made is more for making money. And he has the capacity now to where he can go beyond Willie Lynch and really produce some movies that really, really will empower the Black community even more. But still, it's the ideal of, I'm going to do whatever I can to make some money. Now, if my target market is white people, then I'm going to adjust the marketing piece to where it's going to attract them, to where I won't be as harsh on my thoughts about African American Afrocentric topics, and make it more comfortable for them to approach. So to come in, so we have to decide whether we're going to push the envelope and really do some things to empower us, or we're going to stay on the safe side of the railroad, if you will, and just enough to where we're Black, but we're not going to upset massa.
He did. The most respected person in our community has always been the grandmother. He did a terrible job in the perception of the grandmother with the ma dear. You know, running, getting arrested, going to jail, and carrying guns, and all this stuff is not our image of our grandmothers. At least not in my day. Maybe it was different you, but not in my day. The grandmother was someone that was the pillar, was the strength of the Black community. And he effectively went in and tore that down through that one character. Not to say what he did with what you mentioned earlier, the whole colorism issue. So, yeah. So, Brother Bob, how would you approach this situation?
I think first, to do better, you have to know better.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that we as a people first have to understand, and I'll go back to this, racism, and how racism impacts us daily. And it's said that if you don't understand racism, everything that you think you understand is only going to confuse you.
Okay.
So I think we need to understand how this is impacting us, because many times, and I'm going back to someone you mentioned, Du Bois was talking about that duality, that dual consciousness, where we have that white mind and that Black mind fighting for control over this Black body. Now, many times in this society, who's rewarded is the white mind.
White mind, yeah.
So that's what we find ourselves playing into. We support the image that is going to reward us.
Right.
We tell the story that's going to pay us. Now, we have to get to a point where money is not of the greatest value to us.
Absolutely.
The greatest value has to be of our character and worth and image as a people.
Our passion for who we are.
Yes.
Passion
Love for us
over
as a
profits.
people. Yes. Excellent. So, and I think if we can get to that point, because, and I'm going to go back because, I read, and Mary McLeod Bethune has said something that was so powerful. She said, the worth of a race can be measured by the character of its woman. So looking at the images that are being presented today in Hollywood and on television, we have to ask, what is the worth of our race? Now, based on that, you may say that's denigrating, that's dehumanizing, debasing the images that we are getting of ourselves. So we don't see value in ourselves and in our race.
Right.
So now we have to say, we're going to break through that wall, because that's a wrong, that's a misperception, that is incorrect image of us. But who's going to tell that story? We have to tell that story. We have to record our history, tell our story, start in the home, just tell it to our children, and then go out in the community to anybody that will listen. And then if we get a bigger stage, so be it. Tell our story, make the films, but we got to tell our story, and we're going to have to shout it, and we're going to have to keep telling it over and over again until we start to embrace it and see it as the truth.
Right.
Now, it's a struggle, but I think, we got to be up to it. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves continue to live in this,
Purgatory.
Purgatory. I like that, purgatory. Yeah, I think one of our problems, I'm not going to say it, problems, is that our churches don't put the passion and love for the race above the prophets of the church. And you know what they could do if they would, I believe in the Jewish community, kids have to study the culture. It's part of the religion. What if all our churches would do that? What if Second Baptist, Antioch, Resurrection would say, okay, we're going to have Saturday classes for the kids to come in and learn about their culture. Because I don't care what you say. You can preach the Bible, love your neighbor as you love yourself. How the heck you gonna love your neighbor if you don't love yourself? So it has to start with that. Our kids have to love themselves before we make that next move. And then it's talking about who we are, Mary McLeod Bethune, all the Marcus Garvey, all the great, and that's not, that's not competing with Jesus. We don't want to, none of us up here want to do that. He's the King of Kings. But we want to give our children the tools so that they can do those things that are taught in the Bible. We need to give our kids the tools so they can compete in this world. They're not getting them. That's how I feel. And so we can lay a lot of the blame on the white world, and they deserve a lot of the blame.
But we have to take responsibility.
But we have to take responsibility. And when does the survival of the culture, and it doesn't have to be ministers, it can be Denzel Washington, it can be Halle Berry, it can be all these folks making millions of dollars, that's the prophets over the passion, and play these roles that do nothing but paint a negative picture of our race and our culture. So,
we can certainly take some best practices from the Jewish community, but even the Japanese community. We have a lot of Japanese immigrants who come into this, in San Antonio especially, Japanese children go to school 6 days a week.
do they really?
6 days a week, okay? So the kids who are coming over here, they're coming into American schools. But guess what's happening on Saturday? They're going to school and they're learning Japanese writing.
There you
kanji,
go.
They're learning the culture.
Yes,
because when
absolutely.
they go back to Japan, they have to be fluent in not only the language but also in the writing. So this is a continual. And for a while they were going to Houston, but San Antonio opened it. Well, they made some arrangements with some of the school districts to where they can have access to the classrooms on Saturdays.
Yeah, I think, going back, hitchhiking off that in a way, that, and I'm a Christian. I believe in God, I believe in Jesus Christ, but the culture is more than just the religion. The culture is the art, it's the music, it's the religion, it's everything. It's not only the Christians, but it's the Muslims. It's all that's our culture. Even the right-wing guys, Clarence Thomas is our culture. It's all part of our culture. And we have this idea that the religion rules the culture.
Now, in all honesty, the religion does rule the culture in the society we live in. Let me say this. And I'm gonna say culture is everything. Everything we do, from the names we wear, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, is many times dictated by the religion.
Okay.
The culture.
Okay.
That comes out of that. So we have names like Peter and John and Paul.
Right, yeah.
Okay. We wear certain clothes, we celebrate certain days. That comes out of the religious teachings. And that's fine. But the idea is that that culture has to speak to our needs. So when we was talking just now about how we need to have Saturday schools, I believe we need to have those schools to teach our culture.
Yes.
Teach about the greatness of Africa. And going back to film, I'm gonna just switch it just for a second. Going back to film, one of the things I really enjoyed about the Black Panther film was that I thought it spoke to the culture. And one of the things it highlighted in the culture was the veneration of ancestors or acknowledgement of your ancestors. See, all people acknowledge their ancestors because when you read the Bible, that's what you're reading about ancestors. Okay? So now we got to teach about our ancestors.
Yeah.
We got to teach about Marcus Garvey, Queen Nzinga, Ida B. Wells, Paul Robeson. Those are our ancestors.
Right.
And we have to read their words and follow their wise instructions.
Absolutely.
And the only challenge that's going to be is that we have a lot of churches where they were traditionally Black churches, and we're starting to see more quote unquote diversity. So to have a Saturday school, then you're going to have to really have to say we're going to do a Black culture school so that our kids can get a piece of the training they're not getting in regular school.
Right, absolutely.
And so that's what to me that will be a challenge in terms of getting something like that fully off the ground to where we're going to do 100% African American culture on Saturday.
That would be fantastic. That would be absolutely fantastic.
As challenging as it will be, I think we have no other choice
Than to do it. I agree.
But the way, and this is where, I guess where we could tie it all back into the Black woman, to where the mothers and the fathers are going to have to say enough's enough.
Yes.
You know, we've had enough of the mammy images, we've had enough of the Foxy Browns, we've had enough of the cookies, we've had enough of the Olivia Pokes, we've had enough of the Madeirs. We need to see more positive imaging, so we're going to demand that we need to have a Saturday school to where our kids can see the history of strong Black women, of strong Black men.
You are so good. That's fantastic.
You like that?
I like
You
that.
like that?
Yes. So let's wrap up. Take 30 seconds and give us your best. And I'm going to give you just a little longer, brother, because I want you to tell them about the important event here in San Antonio on Saturday, which deals with the image of the Black woman.
Yes, sir. Well, this coming Saturday, we're having our 3rd annual celebration of Black women. Now, this is an event we started because we wanted to challenge racism and sexism, and more importantly, we wanted to give an honest historical perspective of Black women, showing the true character of Black women. So I think people should come out, and of course, it's free and open to the public. But you come out and you're going to learn some very valuable information, and I think that we can incorporate into our lives, because ultimately the idea is that we have to take what we learn, we have to teach it, but we have to live it.
Okay. Where and what time?
It's coming Saturday at the Carver Library. It's starting at 2 p.m.
Okay.
So we look forward to having people out.
Okay, now you want to wrap up? Take 30 seconds.
Oh, no. Well, first I want to thank my brother. I think this dialogue is so important, and I want to thank you, my sister, because I love your perception and your view. And I think in closing, I really want to say my perception of Black women is very positive, because my perception comes from the reality of living with my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, my nieces, and then being in a community of strong Black women who are intelligent, who are strong, who are kind, who are respectful. And I think ultimately it's not about the movies that we watch, it's about the image we present in our homes and in our community. We have to present strong, positive images and see that so we can be the strong, positive people we are destined to be.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm blessed this evening, this afternoon. My mother is with me.
Right.
And so to have that positive role model in my family, and And the encouraging words that she tells me only makes me want to do the right thing on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of black women don't have access to that. So I'm blessed that my mother is still with me, to stay on me, and make sure I do the right thing.
Okay. Well, thank you all. In closing, I'd like to say that we love our sisters. We love our black women. They are the jewel of our race. And let's stop buying the con. Let's stop buying what we're getting out of Hollywood. And let's redefine just how important our black women are in our lives. This is Discussions with the writer Fred. And remember, tell it our story, our way.